Hi, good afternoon. Today I would like to talk about Harsha Vardhana, the king of ancient India. And firstly, I would like to deal with this topic in three parts. The first part would be about how, in what circumstances, Harshavardhana had ascended the throne, a certain throne in a region in the north of India, in the north of Delhi, in Haryana. What are those circumstances under which he had ascended it? Second, I would like to talk about the regions he had expanded in the northern part of India as well as some other parts. And thirdly, I will talk about the administration of Harshavardhana. So, firstly, I would like to give a background of the situation in north and northwest India in the 6th century AD. So, firstly, in the middle of the 6th century AD, a very large empire of India, the Gupta Empire, who had originated in the middle of the 3rd century AD, had become weak and had broken down or disintegrated into a number of small independent kingdoms. And it has got to do with the incursion of certain tribes who had come from Central India, Central Asia, uh, towards northwest India and passed through a pass called Khyber Pass and entered India. And this led to the weakening of the Gupta Empire, a strong empire which had lasted from the middle of the 3rd century AD to the middle of the 6th century AD. After the breakup or the disintegration of the Gupta Empire, there were small independent kingdoms that had been formed in different parts of North and Northwest India. I would like to talk about four such kingdoms and then some peripheral kingdoms also. Out of all the small independent kingdoms, um, first let me talk about the four kingdoms that had developed after the breakup of the Gupta Empire. The first I would like to talk about a kingdom that had come into prominence in north of Delhi, in the region of Haryana, at a place called Tanesar. And this kingdom was related to a dynasty called the Pushyabhuti dynasty. And this kingdom was started by a person called Prabhakara Vardhana. And he had started this kingdom on 585 AD. So I told you that the Gupta Empire was becoming weak in the middle of the 6th century AD. So here in 585 AD, Prabhakar Vardhana had set up the Pushyabhuti dynasty in Haryana at a place called Tanesar. There were also other small independent kingdoms that had emerged out after the disintegration of the Gupta Empire, and one kingdom was based at a place in present day Allahabad in Uttar Pradesh called Kanuj. And this kingdom was ruled by a dynasty called the Mokari dynasty. There were two other powerful kingdoms, and one kingdom was in Gujarat in a region called Wallabi at that time. It was a region in Gujarat, and this was ruled by a dynasty called Maitrikas, and also in the region of present day Patna, what was called Magadha at that time. It was ruled by a minor line of the Guptas with the same name of the Guptas. They were called Guptas of Magadha. So, in effect, there were four small independent kingdoms in North India in the 6th and the 7th century AD after the disintegration of the Gupta Empire. Out of this, one kingdom had emerged strong among all these kingdoms in the later centuries as well as at that time. And that kingdom was the kingdom of Pushyabhutis, the kingdom of Tanesar, started by Prabhakara Vardhana in 585 AD. Prabhakara Vardhana, based in present day Haryana, had expanded his kingdom to different regions in northwest India, to places called Gandhara and Sindh. He had also got the control or expanded to Gujarat by defeating the rulers of Gujarat. He had defeated the rulers of Gandhara and Sindh as well. Also, his kingdom had a marriage alliance with the other powerful kingdom in North India, the small independent kingdom which was based in present-day Allahabad, called in Uttar Pradesh, called the Kingdom of Kanuj, controlled by the Maukari dynasty. The Pushyabhuti dynasty and the Maukari dynasty had a marriage alliance, and this marriage alliance would also lead the kingdom of Tanesar to expand itself or unify with the kingdom of Kanuj. Later on, I'll tell you how. Essentially, after such expansions by Prabhakara Vardhana would eventually die in 606 AD. He ascended to the throne in 585 AD, and now he died in 606 AD and 605 AD, and his son called Rajyavardhana would ascend the throne. As soon as his elder son Rajyavardhana would ascend his throne, there was some bad news for his kingdom. I told you that there was a marriage alliance between the Maukaris and the Pushyabhutis, and the marriage alliance was between the daughter of Prabhakar Vardhana called Rajyasri and a king of the Maukaris called Grahavarman. So the husband of Rajyasri, or the brother-in-law of Rajavardhana, the eldest son of Prabhakar Vardhana, was killed by a king from a region in the west of Magadha, and that region was called Malwas, and that king who ruled that region of Malwa was Devagupta. So Devagupta had entered Kanuj, which was controlled by Grahavarman, the husband of Rajyasri, and he had killed the king there, Grahavarman. And now he had also imprisoned the queen of Kanuj, Rajyasri. He had captured her and imprisoned her, and therefore this in effect was a bad news for the kingdom of Tanesar, because it had to do something with the sister of Rajyavardhana, the eldest son of Prabhakara Vardhana, who ruled in Tanesar. And therefore Rajyavardhana naturally would march an army towards Kanuj. He had a cavalry of 10,000, and along with him his younger brother would also follow with him. His younger brother was Harsha Vardhana, and ultimately he would defeat the king of Malwa, Devagupta, and also rescue his sister Rajyasri. But later on, what would happen is there was an ally of the king of Malwa, and this ally was based in a region east of Bengal, or eastern Bengal, called Gouda at that time. And the name of this ally was Sashanka. And Sashanka had invited Rajyavardhana for a peace conference for maintaining peace in the territory after the defeat of the king of Malwa, or Devagupta. But once in that peace conference, Sashanka would treacherously kill Rajyavardhana, and ultimately I also told you that Rajyasri, the sister of Rajyavardhana and Harshavardhana, was rescued from being captive in a prison, and Rajyasri now would escape again, and she had escaped to the forest, the Vindhyan forest. The Vindhyan forest extended from Gujarat in the west to Chhattisgarh in the east, and some regions in UP and Bihar in the north. Rajyasri would escape to these forests, the Vindhyan forests. So ultimately this event happened in 606 AD. Rajyavardhana would ascend the throne in 605 AD, and he would defeat the king of Malwa, Devagupta, in 606 AD. And later he would be killed by the ally of Devagupta, Shashanka, in 606 AD. And the sister of Rajyavardhana would escape to the forest of Vindhyas, the Vindhyan forest. And ultimately, Harshavardhana, the elder son, the younger son, or the elder brother of Rajyavardhana, had no choice but to ascend the throne of Tanesar. He had ascended the throne of Tanesar at the age of 16, and he had two goals first, immediate goals in hand. First, he had to rescue his sister, who had escaped into the forest of Vindhyas, and next he had to avenge the death of his brother-in-law Grahavarman as well as his brother Rajyavardhana. With this in mind, he was successful in rescuing his sister. He had been to, with the help of some local tribes of the Vindhya forest, he would rescue his sister who would be who would be trying to self-immolate herself. And after that, he had started a campaign against the king of Eastern Bengal, the present day Eastern Bengal, called Gowda. The name of the king was Sashanka, but this campaign happened to be inconclusive, and Harsha Vardhana would return back ultimately. So essentially, from this, what we can understand is, in the circumstances of great tragedy, Harshavardhana would ascend the throne at the age of 16, ascend the throne of Tanisar, controlled by the Pushyabhuti dynasty. After that, Harshavardhana, between 606 to after he ascended the throne, he would also expand his territory from Tanisar. He would expand to the Ganges plains, which also included Nepal at that time. He would also expand to the former stronghold of the Gupta and the Mauryan Empire, the present day Patna region called Magadha. He would expand into a region in Odisha called Kongadu much later in 643 AD, and also some other regions. Not only this, he would also have allies in the east and the west of India. In the west of India, the ally was a king who was based in a region in Gujarat called Vallabhi at that time. In the east of India, there was another king called Bhaskaravarman in the present day Assam. At that time, the region was called Kamarupa. Bhaskaravarman was an ally of Harsha in the east of India, and also he would defeat the rulers of ruler of Jalandhar in Punjab, and he would also pay tribute to him. Tribute is a kind of wealth that is given to a much powerful empire by a subordinate kingdom to show allegiance and respect to that powerful empire. So, in this way, after the breakup of the Gupta Empire, which has covered large parts of North India, including UP, Bihar, parts of Central India, and parts of Western India, it was the kingdom of Pushyabhutis, it was the kingdom of Harsha that would once again unify North India after there was a breakup of the Gupta Empire for some time into small independent kingdoms. So far I talked about how Harsha has ascended the throne. I also talked about the regions that he had expanded to, but there was one more thing he had done after the killing of his brother-in-law Grahavarman. He had also acquired the stronghold of the kingdom of the Mokharis, Kanauj, which is in present-day Allahabad, UP. And later you would see that he would also make Kanauj as his headquarters or the capital, which was formerly in Tanesar. And he would do that because Kanauj was a place which was agriculturally really fertile, and also it was a place which was far away from northwest, where there would be incursions from certain tribes towards India. And Kanauj was also a place which gave him direct access to the western part of India. It had also given access to the trade routes which went to the south and the eastern part of India, and therefore he would have made it as his headquarters or the capital. So this way he had consolidated, or he had expanded the empire in North India and unified certain parts of North and Northwest India as well. He had also wanted to expand himself to the Deccan or the southern peninsula, and for this he went as far as the Narmada river, but there he was resisted and defeated by a king from a certain kingdom which had its origin in 543 BC, and that kingdom was that of Chalukyas. And the king of that Chalukyas was Pulakeshin II, who commanded the region of Western Deccan at that time. Pulakeshin II would, in a battle with Harsha, would defeat Harsha at the banks of river Narmada in 620 AD. Ultimately, there was a treaty that was signed between both of them, and and it was decided that Narmada River would be the boundary between the kingdom or the empire of Harsha and the kingdom of Chalukyas. So Harsha's empire extended in the east, it extended in the west, it extended in the north, a little bit of northwest, but stopped at the boundaries of the southern part, or the upper boundaries of the Deccan. Now he had a large empire to administer, and he was also a good administrator, and he was an energetic ruler, and he moved to different parts of his empire very regularly, except in the rainy seasons, to familiarize him, to be able to be accessible to his subjects, to get familiarity of his empire, and also to keep a watch on his tributary rulers who were paying allegiance or tribute to him. So it is said that he was consistently on the move, and he would be having a large entourage with him that would be on the move, and there would be makeshift palaces that would be constructed so that he could take some rest. These palaces were constructed using branches of trees and reed, one kind of bamboo. And ultimately, these palaces would also be destroyed or burnt during the departure from that area. Uh, so, uh, so in effect, he was a ruler who wanted to know everything. He wanted to know a lot about his empire, and therefore he would conduct such inspections. And the second aspect about the administration I would like to talk about is the income to carry out the administration. Where did majority of that come from? It came from the rents that were imposed, or the rents collected on the works of the lands of the state. And so there would be agriculture that would be there would be agricultural lands of the state, and there would be people who would carry out agriculture in that, and the rents would be imposed. Then the rent was around was exactly the 1/6 of the produce of the land. There were also other sources of income uh, that would fill a treasury, and ultimately this income would be distributed in various ways. 1/4 of it would be reserved for the government expenses and administration, and another 1/4 for the officials. And I must tell you that Harsha had maintained a large army. He had 5,000 elephants, 20,000 cavalry, and 50,000 infantry. So he had to maintain them, and there was a quarter of the income that was reserved for this. There was also income reserved for the gifts, for giving gifts, and for intellectual pursuits and charity. And finally, a certain portion was given for rewards as well. Some people were also given land grants. Some officials were given land grants other than just income. So, in this way, the kingdom of Harsha had carried out its administration. I told you about the source of income. The majority of it, where it comes from the rent collected on the crown land, from the crown land, and where the money was distributed, where the wealth was distributed ultimately. Harsha would also ensure that he would build certain rest houses and hospitals in different parts of his empire. The rest houses would have benefited the travelers. In the rest houses, there would be, near the spots of the rest house, there would be doctors who would be placed for the benefit of the ailing people and also the travelers. The hospitals also benefited the rich and the poor people. So ultimately, this was the essence of Harsha's administration. And so far, what we have discussed is the circumstances of his ascension to the throne, which happened in 606 AD at the age of 16. And then between 606 to 620, Harsha had expanded his empire from Tanesar to different regions. And in 620 CE or the AD, he had also wanted to come to South India, but then he was defeated by the king of the Chalukyas. I talked about that incident as well. In 643, he had expanded to a region in Odisha called Kongadu. I talked about Kongadu during his expansion. I talked about its administration and then the welfare programs of Harsha. And ultimately, in 647 AD, Harsha Vardhana would die, and with him, the empire of Kanauj would also would also decline. It would not be until early 8th century where Kanauj would again come into prominence. So I hope that you found this video on Harsha Vardhana interesting. Thank you.